Hello everyone, I want to talk about the 5 F's, which basically stem from fight or flight. So most people have heard of fight or flight. It's just one of the things that animals do to respond to an extreme stress. So kind of the adrenaline kicks in and you go into fight or flight mode is what they call it. But actually there's 5 of these. They've named them all F's just so it all matches, I suppose. But you've got fight, flight, freeze, faint, and fool. Fool, people play around with this one a lot as well. Sometimes they call it fawn or friend, and I'll explain why later. That's the most interesting one, and really that is the best response of all. And people do it as well, right? So I'll explain that why later. But these 5 F's apply to mammals as such. Other animals can fit it too, but really, if you get into it, it's a mammal thing. It doesn't matter if it's a human or a dog or a horse. They all go through these kind of 5 things, and it's not just fight or flight. There's lots of different things that they can do. So I want to go through these with you one by one, and what to look for really. We're going to go through them one by one. We are going to start with fight. So as you know, fight is obviously, and people say it's the best form of defense as well, animal goes into attack mode. So animal feels threatened. So it doesn't actually have to be a fight to kick off. It can be a form of reactivity. So when I see dog aggression, most of the time when I see dog aggression, it's from a place of fear. So the dog's just like going into fight mode as a kind of defense mechanism of I don't want anyone near me. Sometimes it's also worried about their own owner. I don't want anyone near my owner. So they go into this mode and then they go into fight mode. However, I will say that most dogs, when they do go into a fight, it's not a proper fight. So I personally class proper fight as puncture wounds, like proper puncture wounds, not just a claw mark, or you get dogs with thin skin like a greyhound. They're going to tear easily anyway, especially around like if there's a scratch on the nose or the ears, that's very thin skin. That's usually done by accident, to be honest. So it's puncture wounds, and it's dogs that latch on. They either latch on, they won't let go, or they do the shake, the death shake. Those are proper fights, and most of the time you're not going to get that. The one time you are most likely going to encounter that are dogs coming out of houses. So whether they've got dog aggression or not, even some of them are just like it at their own house. But if you ever walk a dog and you see a dog coming from their house to you, in their head it's still the same territory, and that's the worst bites are always on their territory. So you've got to get out of there quick. I don't mind if you pick your dog up or climb a tree or jump over a fence or jump on someone's car, but that's the serious stuff. Dogs flying out of houses is usually the most serious bite. In barks and stuff, you can get, people call them fights, but again, I personally wouldn't. It's usually a lot of flurry and a lot of noise. Some dogs get pinned down. Some, it's not so much a pin down, but one of the dogs has actually just flopped on the floor as a submissive anyway, and the other dog's on top, so it looks like that. And it's usually horrendous noise. Often one dog is screaming, which is out of fear, not pain. But you get screaming, you get horrendous noise. Flicker does this. She makes all this bravado. She likes to headbutt dogs. That's her fight mode. It's kind of like a nice headbutt over the back or the chest. And she is muzzled, but to be honest, when she wasn't muzzled, the most she ever did was pull out some fluff from a dog, and she had loads of incidents. It isn't a fight, it's more of a kind of a back off, or if a dog comes in and again it's a fight, and I'm using quotations with my hands that you can't see, it's usually a kind of like, I don't like your attitude, I'm going to put you in your place. But they don't actually want to hurt each other. They're very non-confrontational dogs. It's just noise to scare them. They want the other dog in submission. They don't actually want to hurt each other. So if you have fights in the park, well, if you have lots of fights in the park, you'll know this for yourself. But if you do have a dog come up and it's all scuffs, and try not to be too worried. Obviously separate them. By the way, in a fight, shouting doesn't help. Just separate the dogs physically. It's the only thing you can do. And you'll often find that when you check your dog over, there's nothing there, just a bit of spit and slobber and things like that. So nothing really to worry about. But that's the fight mode. So let's talk about flight. Obviously the opposite. I see flight for more extreme fear reactions, if I'm honest, because if a dog goes into fight mode, they either do that if they feel they can't escape, so they can't do flight. So sometimes I see this with dogs where they're dog aggressive, only on lead but not off lead, and that is a case of where they can't move around and show normal behaviour, so they feel that they're a bit trapped. But you can have it in houses, you can have it in crates and dens and rescue dogs as well. But these dogs will often prefer to go into flight mode if they're really, really frightened. So really fearful dogs go into flight mode. If they're feeling more confident, then they will often hold their ground and go into fight mode instead, because that's what Flick does. If she's really, really frightened, she just leaves. She leaves, and it's not a good problem to have. I'll explain why. But she leaves the situation. If she feels that basically she can take this dog on, she holds her ground, and like I said before, she kind of gives it a headbutt. But that's also because she's learnt that aggression, unfortunately, gets the scary object away from her. There's not many dogs that will hold their ground against a headbutt. If they've come over and she's done that, most of them back away, so she's learned that it's the right thing to do. So this is why she doesn't run away, but she did used to. It's a really big problem if you've got a dog or animal that goes into flight mode, because you completely lost control. So you don't know where they're going to run. They could try and run home, where they could get lost or go over roads, and most dogs aren't very car savvy. Sometimes they just run straight back to the car, your own car, which is good. It really depends on the dog's personality, really, but it's not a good problem to have. So what you're looking for, if your dog does go into flight mode, you've got to secure that recall and basically teach your dog that you are the safe space instead of running home. You do have to prove this as well, so you can't have your dog here. I'll give, again, dog aggression as an example. So say your dog has learned you're the safe space, they've come to you, and then the other dog follows, bounds up, and there's a massive altercation. If you haven't managed to stop that dog, your dog will lose trust in you, that you're not the safe space. So you do have to prove it, and that's how you can reduce the flight risk, to be honest. But that's flight. Let's talk about freeze. So freeze is the classic rabbit in the headlights, so that you've got a picture of what freeze looks like. The only dog that really I know that does this consistently with the breed are greyhounds. They're one of those dogs that they go for a walk, and one of the number one problems I see for them are stopping on the walk, and no matter what, you cannot get them to move. They have just shut down. They're basically pretending they don't exist, and they've frozen still. Not many dogs do this, but again, it's a mammal normal fear response. I have this one sometimes, and kind of people doing things in front of other people as well, like presentations, they can go into freeze mode. It is just a way of the body just trying to keep everybody safe. It senses danger and it just goes still. That's it. It's not particularly useful to us, especially if there is danger, because you're not going to get out of it. But it's just another response. But like I said, most dogs don't do this freezing, and it is a proper freeze. It's not the stillness before a bite, that kind of the quiet and then the bite comes. It's not that. That's not a freeze. It is just it's frozen for several minutes, and it's really hard to get out of it. Usually what I try and do, one of the few things I do, is just try and get the dog moving again, because then it gets the brain moving. Once the legs move, the brain moves, and then they come out of it. But greyhounds especially, they're very, very difficult for it, because once they've gone, they've kind of gone off the planet. They've gone into greyhound land, and you have to almost wait for them to come back before you can proceed with the training. But if they are freezing, it is because they're frightened of something. So you have to work through the root cause rather than just be pulling and pushing them out of that direction. It will be that something's happened. It may be something's happened months ago, to be honest, like a bang happened at this particular spot, or a weird smell that reminded them of something else, because a lot of them are ex-races, they've got a past and a history. But it will be some sort of fear response, and you've got to make sure you're doing positive association once you've found out the root cause around this area to get them out of it. Let's talk faint. Faint, again, a weird one, even rarer than freeze. And again, I'm going to go back to greyhounds for this one. This is the only real incident that I see of fainting in dogs. And I don't know many other animals that use fainting as a tactic, apart from people. We seem to be very, very common with it, like doctors or needles or blood or whatever, you just pass out. But greyhounds tend to do this weirdly, a weird one, when they're having a wash. So if you wash them, so if you get them in the shower and you wash them, or even the hose pipe, what it looks like is, it looks like the back legs have collapsed, or it looks like they've slipped, because they suddenly go down and pretty much immediately right themselves. But again, greyhounds, it's really, really common. I don't know if other breeds do that when they're getting washed, but it has come up a few times on the greyhound site. And my old greyhound Sky, bless her, she used to do it as well. And I always thought she'd slipped, and then I read about it, and it's not. It's a faint or a near faint, so it's just the shock really. And it doesn't matter if the water's warm or cold. It's just the shock of being in the shower. And this is what I mean. Greyhounds are one of those really weird dogs. They're very, very sensitive and very, very stubborn, which is a really weird combination. But that's what it is. It's just an adrenaline response. That's what they do. You'd think greyhounds, their natural one would be flight. So it's kind of interesting that they do more freeze and faint than anything else when they could just run away and get away from everything. But that's where you'd see the faint one. Like I said, it's more humans that have learned this, because again, it's not really a great one for survival. If you're about to get eaten by a bear or something and you faint, then that's kind of it, right? So it's not a great one, but that's probably why you don't see many dogs do it. And then the last one, now this is the most interesting and intricate and misread one. Okay, so this is fool or fawn or friend. What it is it looks like play. Okay, so I'll give you some examples of this, but it looks playful, but it is a stress response, and it's really important to read the dog correctly. So the other week I saw a dog, Winnie, and she's really, really good dog, really, really nice owners, but she's developed barking at a lot of dogs, almost for no reason, out of nowhere. So I went to see her, and as we were chatting, they said, "Oh, it's really weird because she plays with most dogs." And I was like, "Really? Like, she plays with most dogs, and she's over 2? That's weird." Especially what she is. She's not a breed that matures slowly, so she's not a playful breed. She's not an antagonistic breed like a Patterdale. They're kind of looking for a rough time all the time. And I thought, this is really weird. So I had a look, and she did. She went up to a dog and she started play bowing, and she made her body language soft, and she was doing all this scooting around and the zoomies. And it was pretty much uncalled for, because the other dog hadn't initiated it at all. And they said, yes, this is what she does with most dogs. And I straight away was like, no, this is a fawning response. She is stressed. She doesn't know what to do. And because she's a nice dog, she's going into this. It's like, please don't hurt me. How about we play? Yeah, let's play a game. Yeah, would you like a game? I'm not going to hurt you. Yeah, but let's have a game. Whereas actually, she could have just gotten away with a sniff and leave. But she doesn't know what to do. She's panicking. It obviously is the best response out of the lot, because they're pacifying the other dog, right? It's a really good response. The dog is not as stressed as the other responses. So if you're getting this one, it can turn into aggression because they're not as stressed. A highly stressed dog will show something else, but this, if they're not as stressed, this is the one they show before, which is good. But it does mean they are stressed, but it's not. They're completely stressed out of their mind and panicking and don't know what to do, if that makes sense. My dog Flicker does this as well. Unfortunately, she doesn't do it with dogs. She just goes straight into fight mode with them. But she does it with my son. If he's being too rough or too much with her, which, to be honest, it's Flicker, so she's highly sensitive. So if you just put your arm over her shoulder, that's too much. But say he does that, she will start this behaviour, and it looks like play. It looks like she wants to have a game with him, but it's not. And one of the reasons why I know it's not is because she repeatedly comes to me and sits down on me, and she's asking for help. And that's why they call it friend as well. So it's a call for a friend. So she's asking me, Tilly, please sort out this madness. I don't want to fight him. I don't want to hurt him, but he's stressing the hell out of me. Now, if I didn't sort it out, and Charlie was particularly rough one day, or it just kept going, or I thought they were playing and just left them to it, then she would go into fight mode and she would bite him. And that's what happens with dogs. That's why you've got to be really sure of what you're reading with your dog. The dog shouldn't be playing all the time. They shouldn't be playing with stranger dogs with every dog they meet. They shouldn't be kind of playing on and off in the daytime, unless they're a Hindji breed or they're very, very young, and that's kind of more normal. I also see this with littermate syndrome. So littermate syndrome, one of the things that can happen is they start fighting each other. Same sex, similar personality, same age. They grow up and then one day they just start fighting, when people have told me they've played all the time though. They're just best friends. It's like, it's not playing, it's fawning. They're stressed. It's a bit chaotic. They don't know what to do, so they're trying to play their way out of it. But sooner or later it turns into a fight. And then once that starts, they run down that road because they're like, oh yeah, this works much better for me. So really be sure of what you're doing. Another time Flicker uses this is if she's not sure of a situation, she'll be on lead, so she can't really get away with it from the situation. And what she'll do, she'll start jumping up at me, and she doesn't do that. She's very animated dog, but she's not very cuddly or clingy or anything like that. So I know something is wrong. So we went. If we go to a place where there's lots of big mastiffs, for example, like the mastiff walk, even if we're at a distance, if we hang around there, she will start jumping up at me because she's like, I'm worried about the situation, I'm not sure what to do, are we safe, are we not? She's looking for a direction as well. So for me, that's really easy to read. So what I'll try and do from that, the first thing is just redirect her. So like sit and treat and come on, let's go, and we're going to do it. If she keeps doing, then I'll increase the distance. So say she doesn't get distracted and she's like, no, I am getting quite stressed. I can't keep her at that stress level because she's telling me she's stressed, right? So I just bring her out of it for a bit, give her a break, and then head back in, but keep the distance much bigger between her and the trigger. If your dog is doing anything like this, not attention seeking, because that is different, but say it's out of the blue, so say they're kind of coming to you and they're jumping on you or they're trying to get your attention and it's just a bit weird, be sure to check it out. Another time she does this is when she's in pain. So if she's got a stomach ache, she will just run to me and pretty much jump on my lap from nowhere, and it's really out of the blue. The other night, it's difficult to read because it comes in degrees, right? So if she's in a lot of pain, she'll do it a lot, but if she's in mild pain, she won't do it that much. But the other night, she wouldn't settle. She was running in and out, and she came up to us, but only kind of sniffed us and went away and in and out. And I was like, this is really weird. What's going on? She settled down. And the next day I was just stroking her and stuff, and I found all these thorns in her fur. So obviously what was happening is she was lying down and these thorns were pressing into her. But again, she had asked me for help, but where it wasn't as obvious, I hadn't read it correctly. But that's, again, it's the call a friend thing. So ask a friend for help. People do this as well. Obviously you can ask your friend for help, but people do it, and we call it people pleasing. So we're in a stressful situation and suddenly we kind of don't have any boundaries and we're like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. Okay, yeah. And we become very, very nice, very, very genial. And it is a really good survival response. You may be kind of kicking yourself later and feel like they've got away with stuff, but you can't help it. It is just a survival response, and it pacifies the angry person. And I'd much rather a dog show this to me first than go straight into fight mode, because it's really frustrating and stressful for everybody involved, and you're constantly apologising to people as well, even if it's their fault because their dog's off lead and yours not, right? But I'd much rather that the dog shows its appeasing behaviours. Sky was very much like this. She was very, very balanced, very calm, very unanimated dog. However, when the tough got going type of thing, we had one incident where a staffy came and it looked like it was going to kill Flicker. Flicker started screaming and it was horrendous. And Sky started going nuts and started doing zoomies around the whole group. And from an onlooker's point of view, it looked like she'd just lost the plot, right? It's like, what are you doing? There's a dangerous dog. It's trying to kill your mate. You should go into fight mode. You should be aggressive, protective. But she's a greyhound. She's not a guard dog, so that's not naturally in her. But actually, it was really interesting because it worked, right? It worked. What she was doing was creating a distraction. And the staffy left Flick and it went off to Sky. Everyone was fine, no one was hurt, but it did the right thing and it started playing because it just wanted to, play. But the thing is, what can happen with play is that high excitement leads to aggression. So it wasn't going to play with Flick, but he decided after chasing Sky and getting some of that adrenaline out. Adrenaline is your worst enemy really with dogs. But after chasing Sky and he's never going to catch her, then it started a game and everyone could collect their dog. So she did do the right thing, but she did it in her way, not in a kind of protective way. But that's what it was. If you ever see this and this seems weird, why is the dog playing? Why is the dog asking for my attention? Why are they jumping up? It's fawning, and fawning is really important because the dog is stressed, not too stressed, but it's then up to you to read, work out what's going on and solve the problem. And then when you can do that, your dog will trust you a lot more. You're going to have that proper connection, like a really deep connection of communication. So it's a really good one. Have a look at it, study up on it. I've got a few TikToks on it as well. If you want to check out my TikTok, I've used one with Chuck because he does this. He does this fawning behaviour. And what's going on is he's trying to pacify Flicker. She's annoyed with him, she's angry, and he does this fawning behaviour, which she doesn't really like anyway. But he's trying to get her to play because he doesn't want to fight her. But he's a bit rough, so she's putting him in his place. But go check out that, and it is just, when you start seeing it and start reading it correctly, it all falls into place as why is the dog behaving that weirdly. But yeah, there's your 5 Fs. They're very important. They're all related to stress on one sort and the other. And now you know kind of what way your dog's going to go, and learn what direction your dog likes to go in as well, so that you can start just building up that connection and predicting what they're going to do next.
If you're interested in more videos or stuff that I do, I am on TikTok. I usually put my TikTok videos also on Facebook and Instagram, so just search Fawn Dog for those. And the main website is fawndog1to1dogtraining.co.uk. Thanks for listening, guys.